of yourself. Don't be another brick in the wall. Know that you are unknown. Cause you know you hold a knowing within. Knowledge is a nature. That is your true nature. We are related. No need for mind control. Awaken the seed, my friend. Hello everybody, welcome back to class. Ranger Greg here. Welcome to everybody. So, last week we saw that we make sense of our environment and classify whatever happens around us according to different features. Sensitivity, memories, images, movies, media, genetics, body information, emotions, the way we speak, the way we interact with others, and so on. The list is long, but it's part of our human experience. In science, comparison and classification is quite predominant. Not that it's bad, but that's just the way we just go about things. That's just the way we choose and make sense of scientific rigor. So, to name a few, we have so many examples of the way we classify. Astrology. We separate planets and put them in solar systems, which are part of galaxies, which are part of the universe, distinguishing black holes from non-black holes, and so forth. Geometry. We separate angles from lines. We separate points from curves. We separate squares from circles. We basically just determine this is not the same. It does not look the same. So we look at physical features. Phylogeny. The art of classifying the living according to their genetic heritage and their physical features. Of course, I name it an art because in order to perform an art, you need to be in tune. You need to work with accuracy and determination. Rearrange the natural environment in different ways too. Like we saw in video 5, we can differentiate different climates. We can sort the natural environment or niches, habitats, ecosystems, and so forth. So the scale of each class, of each classification, should I say, differs. Some are really big, some are very narrow. We can also classify things in a very arbitrary way. No scientific rigor needed. Ideas are a great idea. Did that just make sense? Ideas. We differentiate them from good and bad, right? But are we distinguishing between productive versus non-productive thoughts? That's a reminder to apply mindfulness. And then we have terms that kind of work like hybrids in our language as well as in science. The word landscape is a great example, because it can be studied on an ecological level. Just what features do you see around you? What is growing around you? What is the history of that place? According to the ecology.
I can now see everything. I can see it all.
Landscape can also be looked at on a cultural level. Like what interactions are established between men and the environment? What cultural meaning does this landscape have, this feature have for men?
So soft. Woo! Soft. Soft.
How do basically humans view their surroundings? How do they make sense of the vegetation that is growing around them? How do they differentiate from one mountain to the other? How do they just interact and create a relationship with what surrounds us? How do they make sense of their surrounding? These are all questions that anthropologists and ethnobotanists and ethnoecologists study. I might do a video later down the line to study these aspects a little more. It's quite fascinating. and very humbling. These examples show only a few ways humans make sense of everything that is. And as suggested previously, that is absolutely not done in the same way across cultures. So, any angle of approach should be considered and not discarded, as we all have a piece of the answer. You might want to write this down, as this will undoubtedly bring a flow of serenity in your interactions with other fellow human animals. Just saying. We saw previously that we can range plants according to the climatic occurrence and the physical features that gives them advantages, adaptive advantages, according to these climates. So now there's another type of classification that is quite prevalent in ecology. Eco means house, logi means study. The study of a house, the study of a earth, the study of a planet, the study of a home. Namaste. And it is the classification of Raunkiaer.
Rockeneer.
How many vowels can you fit together? Give me an A, give me an E, give me an I, give me an O, give me an U. A, E, I, O, U. Hey! We will look into this classification a little further as it draws our attention to another feature of plants. And the Raunkiaer classification deals with the growth point of plants. So you'll probably ask yourself,
Growth point?
the growth point is basically from where a new root or stem is growing on the plant. This is located at different heights on different plants. So the growth point, meaning the point the plant is growing from, is also called the apex. So apex is actually quite a familiar term when it comes to food chains. Apex predators are at the tippy top of that pyramid. And it works the same way. At the apex, you have cells called apical cells or terminal cells that are at the really end of a point in the plant. And that's where the plant is growing from. Growth point, the point where the plant is growing from. Raunkiaer looked at where this growth point was located on plants. Basically at the height at which that growth point is located, starting at the ground level. So he looked at this growth point during the less favorable season of the year. Less favorable? What does that even mean? Well, he looked at basically where the bud is located on a tree during the winter. Or where is the plant storing its nutrients during a very harsh summer. Basically looking at where is that organ situated when the conditions around it are way too harsh to actually grow. You don't want to grow during a harsh winter. You don't want to grow during a super hot summer. You want to grow when the conditions are optimal, just right. So here is what he had in mind. That is Raunkiaer's classification. These are all the different classes that he came up with. So don't worry about the names yet. We'll walk you through each category. Just want you to pay attention to where the buds are actually located in each class. You can see that in the first one, they're pretty high up. Second one, closer to the ground. Third and fourth, even closer. And towards the right, they're actually in the ground. Okay, so just remember that. He looked at where the growth point was located in plants. Now, let's go ahead and explore some more.
Welcome to the mysterious world of epiphytes. Are you an epiphyte?
So, epiphytes are the first category in the Raunkiaer classification because they are the highest up. They basically relying on often trees, can be anywhere.
It's epiphytes being characterized by two words. Epi, on top. Phyte, phytos, plants. Plants that grow on top of others. Very good.
Due to local climatic conditions, I had to rely on online material to support my claim visually. Again, just try your best. So, epiphytes usually occur in areas where moisture is quite elevated, even if just seasonally. And they rely on other species to stay upright. They're called mechanically dependent. So it said they depend on support of other plants. So you might think something growing on top of another plant might be parasitic, but it's not. They only use them as support and collect nutrients and water from moisture or rainwater.
The next category is the category of phanerophytes. Phanero means visible. So just like this tree and most shrubs that we encounter, hopefully on a daily life, are included in that category. And they are described as having their growth point 20 inches or 50 centimeters above ground. Okay, so that's about a third of my size over here. A third? A quarter. Third category of this classification are the chameophytes. And chamea means low growing, closer to the ground. And these guys are groups perennial herbs or low growing shrubs, and they are characterized by having low growth points, meaning they do not exceed 20 inches or 50 centimeters, and they're just smaller. We saw that trees are higher than 50 centimeters or 20 inches, but them being small doesn't make them less valuable, right? There's a distinction that needs to be made between the term annual, meaning 1 year, 1 season, and perennials, more than 1 season, more than 1 year. So the next category speaks of pterophytes, and ptero means summer in Greek. And these guys, just like these cute little annual flowers, come out when the conditions are right and start as seeds. So they just have time to produce their flowers, produce their seeds, and fade away. So they do not last more than 1 season, and they are called pterophytes, and all starts at seeds. The next category are hemicryptophytes. Hemi means half, and crypto, just like geophytes, means earth. Okay, so close to the earth. And they're characterized by dense clusters of leaves, just like this one. And these leaves die back during the unfavorable season or when the conditions become too harsh. Like if there's not enough water, they're just gonna dry out and still protect the very center of the plant. And some of them produce gorgeous flowers. Look at this. As you can see, some of these hemicryptophytes can get pretty big. I can sit in it. Look at this. I'm surrounded by dense leaves. That's what they do. They create almost like a fortress of leaves. They're usually very densely packed. And this one produces huge flowers. Here we go. Next category. It's called geophytes or cryptophytes. And geo means earth. These plants spend harsh months on the ground. Just wait until the conditions are right. They basically have a device on the ground that lasts often more than just 1 year. So they're also called perennials. And just like this wild cucumber, that is extremely dangerous and wild, it's growing as a vine at the beginning of spring. A lot of people think it's invasive, but it's actually not. It's very harmless, and it fades away very quickly. It doesn't produce its own wood, and it's kind of like a little floppy. So once it's produced its fruit, which is very pokey, and produce its seeds, it fades away, and the energy goes back into its roots, which looks like a huge sweet potato. Don't eat it. Next category, halophytes. Halos means marsh, which means an area that is saturated in water throughout the year. And they spend the less conducive months with buds that are underwater. And as soon as the temperature of the water rises and the overall sunlight is longer during the day, they start popping up and flowering above water. Another fun fact about helophytes is that they actually start growing underground. Okay, so they start their growth below the surface. And they slowly emerge, usually connected to a source of water. And because of these cattails, the water dried out, but it means that they have very deep roots, which acts as an underwater source. So even if you don't see a whole watery surface, that's an indicator of presence of a lot of water. If you're thirsty, look out for these guys and dig deep.
The last class of Raunkiaer's classification are called hydrophytes. Hydro means water, phytes, phytos, plants. So plants that live in water. And as you can see on this picture, they're not necessarily bound to the ground. They don't have roots that reach down into the ground necessarily. But their whole life cycle is spent in the water. So they have a series of floaters or leaves that allow them to stay at the surface of the water body. So hydrophytes are intrinsically bound to a water environment. So these life forms are not evenly distributed throughout this world because, as we know well now, climates have different features. To name a few examples, in the tropics, there's an abundance of phanerophytes, trees, tremendous trees, everywhere, super high up, allowing many other plants to climb on them, to live on them, under them. In hot and dry climates, there's an abundance of annual plants, also called pterophytes, that emerge from seeds. And in humid and more temperate climates, there's an abundance of cryptophytes and hemicryptophytes, who are spending, the worst part of the year on the ground. Of course, I'm not gonna ask you to learn this by heart, right? It's just kind of like a referral, and also giving you a different view on how to classify plants while taking their environmental interaction in account. But I have some special assignments for you, so stay tuned. Here we go. Assignment number 1. Find 3 plants illustrating 3 different classes according to Raunkiaer's classification. So you want to take a picture of them and put the name of the class under the picture. And you get extra credit if you find out what the actual name of the plant is. Assignment number 2, we saw that we can range plants according to different features. Now I want you to come up with your own idea, your own classification. According to what feature could you actually range the plant realm? Be creative, can be anything. Scientific, non-scientific, just have fun with it. Assignment number 3. Last week, we saw that students classified objects according to their use, sentimental value, material, size, weight, and other physical features. Do you think that we can classify humans too? Assignments number 3. In groups of 2 to 3 students, I want you to find out how humans were classified throughout history and this day. Can be according to economics, physical features, to names, origins, histories, and if you find the context in which that classification took place, major credit for you. So, the context, I mean, did the classification come up in wars, after wars? Did it come according to an invention of some sort, or a migration, or that's up to you. You're welcome to ask people around you, parents, teachers, peers, siblings, and so on. Just educate yourself. This was Ranger Greg on classifications and the purpose of them. It was a pleasure to have you. You need to have fun with these assignments. And if you don't, ring me up. See y'all. Till next time. Ha! Yeah! Back to Ranger Greg. So, how can we use...